So in last video, we had seen what is the IAM, how we can add the users, how we can add the group, how we can provide the policies to the user. So in this session, we are going to discuss about the VPC, that's the virtual private cloud, why we need a VPC and how to create a VPC, right? So let's start with the why we need a VPC. Let's see, this is my AWS data center. This is the AWS data center. And in the data center, so I created one virtual machine. This is my virtual machine, right? My VM1. Just like me, there are millions of people who are also using the AWS for creating their virtual machines. So I created my VM1, this is my virtual machine. Now there's another person who also created a virtual machine over there. That's a VM2, right? So I have a VM1, they have a VM2. Basically, we are using same AWS data centers. So they are all on AWS same network, right? And logically, if they both are on AWS data center and like they both are using AWS and both are on AWS data center, both are connected to each other by physical network. So logically, they can connect to each other. So my one VM can directly ping to my other machine, and my one VM can directly connect to the other machine if they are in the same network. So like I am using a 192.168.1.10 network. So let's if my other person also use a same network, I can directly communicate with the other machine, right? And basically this was happening before, and that was not secure. You also you had only one option to secure that thing with a firewall. And if you miss a rule in a firewall, there was a huge chances that your machine can be hacked, or machine can be compromised with a network threats, right? So that was not a secure way to create a virtual machines. So why AWS introduced what AWS introduced? AWS introduced the VPC. That's a virtual private cloud, right? So whenever I want to create any virtual machine in my AWS network, what I will need a VPC first. Same the other customer will need. So whenever the other customer of AWS wants to create a virtual machine on AWS, they will also need a VPC. That's a virtual private cloud. And the virtual private cloud will work like a isolated network for me, also the isolated network from them, right? So any machine from my network cannot communicate to other machines directly in other network. They can communicate, but for that you have to add some extra routing rules. Without that, you cannot communicate with them, right? So this was the functionality that VPC adds to isolate your machines, to isolate your network. So you can isolate your machines via application basis, via project basis, via company basis, depends, right? So first create a VPC and then create your virtual machine. That's a policy that AWS provides, right? So basically for isolating our all resources, like I just selected a virtual machine. It may be a RDS instance, it may be ABS storages, it may be AFS storages, it may be anything. So that all resources must be in my VPC, in my isolated network, right? So before creating any type of resource on AWS, you must have to understand what is a VPC and how to customize, how to configure your VPC on AWS. After that, you can configure your other services, right? So let me delete the other VPC and let's work on a one VPC now. So I have this AWS. In the AWS, I have this VPC, right? And this is my virtual machine, right? And then we need to design our VPC. So before going over there in a designing procedure, let me give you a simple case study. So what we are going to do now. So we are going to work on a simple case study of a 3-tier architecture. a 3D architecture that we have one application layer and one database layer, right? And the application, like a website, is hosted on the web on the hosting server, and the backend there is a database, right? Maybe a MySQL in-depth database, and we have a hosting server, right? So we go assume that is we got a task to host a website on AWS. So how we will design our VPC along for that, right? And the network that we are going to design must have the following functionalities. The first functionality, it must be highly available. It must be HA, right? It must be a fault tolerance, right? Other thing, it must be scalable, right? Then it must be secure. That is a basic requirement that customer have. Every customer have this requirement. Whenever they want to host a website, or they want to host any service on AWS, they all have this requirement. Like their application must be highly available, their application must be fault tolerance, their application must be scalable, it must be secure, right? And basically, it is three-tier application. So right now, we are just going to focus on the three-tier architecture. And in future videos, we are going to focus on the high availability, fault tolerance, scalability, and security. And then we are going to discuss about what is high availability, what's fault tolerance, what's the scalability. Now let's focus on the 3D architecture. So what's my 3D architecture? It's just an architecture where you have a web server and you have a database server, right? And due to some standards, you can't install a web server and a database server in a single machine. You must need two different machines for that. One will be your web server, the other will be your database server, right? Now, your web server, the customer will going to access your web server over the internet, right? And what about the database? So people who are not going to access the database, they are just going to access, let's say is my customer, and what customer will do? Customer will access the URL or the IP address of my web server, right? And this web server will be backend connected to my database server. So let's my web server, and this is my database server. So my web server in the backend will be connected to my database server, right? So nobody from the outside not going to directly connect to the database. They are just going to connect to the web server, and using what they are going to connect, they are going to connect using the internet, right? So the medium that they are using for connectivity, that be internet that everybody use, like we regularly access google.com, facebook.com, instagram.com. So what we use as a medium, we use the internet as a medium. So we must have internet available on a laptop, so then we can connect to the internet, and the internet will pass our query to the web server, right? That means the client and the web server both must be connected to the internet. Both must be connected to the internet, right? Okay. Now, what about the database? We will not need any kind of internet connectivity for my database. I only need an internet connectivity for my web server. I will not need for my database. If the client from outside will not going to connect to my database server, they are just going to connect to my web server. So I will not need any kind of internet for my database. I just need for my web server, right? So just like that, there may be a multiple machines who need a internet, and there may be a multiple machines they doesn't need internet in your architecture, right? And for that, AWS added some other functionality under the VPC that we call as subnets, right? So as per the type of the application that you're hosting, as per the, like, is it public or is it private, depending on that, you can create a subnets and you can push the application into the subnet, right? You cannot directly create an application inside the VPC. You will need a subnet for that, right? So you need dash functionality. So as per our law, as per our architecture, we have a machine which is public, and we have a machine which is private, right? So we are going to create two different subnets, right? Because there must be a single subnet for creating an application. I can create a single subnet, but on a single subnet, there will be one public machine, one will be my private machine. And I don't want that. What I want a separate subnet, a separate subnetwork for my web server, and separate subnetwork for my database server, right? So one will be my public subnet. Subnet is just a dividing your network into subnetworks, nothing else, right? So let's assume this is my subnet, a public subnet. Let's make background, right? And one will be my private subnet. So all my public machine will be in public subnet, all my private machine will be in private subnet. Right now there are just two machines, right? But in future we are going to add more than that. So my all public will be in public subnet, public machines will be in public subnet, private machine will be in private subnet. So web will be connected to the internet and the DB will not. But now they are just names. A public and private. Now they are just names. My both subnets are private now. Because why? Because of this VPC. I already said that what is VPC? It's a virtual private cloud. So it's a private cloud for me, but how it is the virtual? So it's an isolated cloud. If it is an isolated network, so these machines are isolated. They can communicate with each other, but they cannot communicate outside the network, right? If you are using the isolated network, you can't go outside out of the isolated network. And whenever you want to go outside of a network, you always need a gateway, right? Like if you're just sitting in a room, let's see this. This is your room where you are sitting in. You're just playing some videos. You're watching videos, right? And if you want to go outside the room, you don't have any door for going outside because it's an isolated room. So when you want to go outside the room, what you will need? You will need a door to go out. So using that door, you can just go outside the room. And this door which we call as a gateway in the net in our term of networking, right? So I will need a gateway. Let's say it's my gateway to go outside, right? So using the gateway, I can go outside to the network, to the internet. So the internet will be connected to my gateway. Now, if this is your room, assume that you have one more gate here and one more gate over here, right? Now, you outside the room. So door you will select because you have two gateway, you have three doors to go out, right? Let's see your front door, it's your back door, and it's your side door, right? On the front door, you have the front garden, right? On the back door, you have the backyard. On the side door, you have a balcony, right? If you want to go to the garden, so you will select the front door. If you want to select to the if you want to go to the balcony, you will select the side door. If you want to go to the backyard, your backyard, you will select the back door. So depending on the destination, you will select your door. And we are the human being, we can calculate all this stuff in our brain. Like this is my destination, and for this destination, this will be my gateway. So we can calculate this stuff in our mind, right? But this is not a case with a network. So we have to tell the network that if you want to go to the internet, so the internet we can specify as 0.0.0.0/0. This is the identification of the internet, right? So we have to tell our machines that if you want to go on this destination, go through this gateway. Like there may be a multiple gateway. Internet gateway must be one, and you cannot add more than one gateway for the VPC, right? But there may be other gateways, like there may be a NAT gateway, there may be a VPN tunnels, there may be any other gateways that you have available with you, right? So for selecting the path, what you will need? You will need a route table. Like as I said, if you are a human being, we can do all the calculation in our brain, but this machine can't do that. So what we will need? We will need a route table, right? So just add the gateway in the route table. Like if you want to go to this network, go through this particular gateway and associate this route table to the public subnet. Don't associate this route table to the private subnet. Just associate it with the public subnet. That's it. Because your public machines wants to go to the internet. Your private machine doesn't wants to go to the internet. So this subnet, this route table should not be connected to the private subnet. It should be connected to the public subnet, right? Whenever you are these machines, like my web machine wants to go to the internet, what the web machine will do? Web machine will search for the associated route table. And which is the associated route table for me? This is the associated route table for me, right? So web server will ask to the route table that I want to go to the internet. I want to go to the google.com. I want to go to the facebook.com. I want to go to the redhat.com or any other website or anywhere. It wants to go anywhere over the internet. Where is anywhere? The anywhere is this, just like a star. Anywhere is 0.0.0.0/0. So whenever it wants to go anywhere over the internet, the route table will forward the request to the internet gateway, because we had configured this already on the route table. I will show you how you can configure that, right? So this request will be forwarded to the internet gateway and to the internet. If any customer from the outside wants to connect to the web server, so it will add the IP address of the web server. So first a request will be directed to the internet gateway, then the route table, and then the web server. Same in a reverse case, right? So you will need a VPC for the isolated network, and you must need at least one subnet for creating your virtual machine. You cannot create your machine outside the subnets, right? So you must need at least one. So what we added two, one for the public, one for the private, right? So all the virtual machine in the public subnet can go to the internet, and all the machines in the private subnet cannot go to the internet. So that will improve my security for my private subnets. And public, they can easily move towards the internet, right? So they can access the route table, internet gateway, and the internet finder. And same in a reverse case. That's it. Now, let's discuss about the something of security. For the security in the network, we use a firewall as a security device. And what firewall basically manages? The firewall manage the request, the incoming request and the outgoing request, which is coming on your web server, right? So these are the web server. The server, that means that they are providing some services over the internet, right? And if they are providing the services, the people from the internet, they will request for the services, right? And you just have to allow some specific request. Like if it is a web server, you just have to allow the web server related request, like HTTP related request. If it's a DNS server, just allow the DNS related request. If it is a DHCP server, just allow the DHCP related request. If there's a DB server, just allow the database related request. Don't allow any other request into your machine, right? And that basically the firewall. The firewall just allow them some specific kind of request into your machine. So we have to configure the firewall for the web server, for the DB server, to allow some specific request. Now, the firewall, for the firewalls, we have a service called as security groups, which will work like a firewall, right? So this is my firewall. So what we will need? We will need two security groups. The one security group for my web server, and I will need the other security group from DB server, right? So one security group for my web server and the other security group for my DB server, right? The web server, the security group of the web server will allow all the HTTP related requests, and the security group, the DB server, will allow the all MySQL related requests. Right? These are basically the firewalls. Right? Then we have the other kind of firewall that you call as NACL, the network access control list. So this firewall, a security group firewall, will protect your instances, and your NACLs, a network access control list firewall, will protect the whole network. If this is my NACL, this NACL will protect my whole public subnet, and same for my private NACL, which will protect my whole private subnet. So one NSCL for my public subnet and one NSCL for my private subnet. Right? So there may be a multiple machines in a public subnet. So all the machines in a public subnet will be protected by this NSCL, and all the machines by a private subnet will be protected by this NSCL. Right? So both are the firewalls, but there are difference in the both firewalls. Right? I will show what's the difference in a public and a private firewalls. Sorry, NSCL and a security group. Okay, we have a NSCL and we have a security group. Right? The first that we had already seen that the NSCL will protect your subnet. So this is called as subnet level security. Right? And the security group will protect only your virtual machine. That's the instances. So it's a instance level. Instances are called as virtual machines. So you can call it the instance. Instance level security. Right? That's the first difference that we have already seen. Then there's a major difference is like this. NSCL we call as a stateless firewall. And the security we call as a stateful firewall. Right? Now, let's see what is a stateless and what's a stateful. Right? Understanding the stateless and stateful firewall, you have to understand this concept first. Inbound, then outbound, then request, response. So if you understand this concept, you will easily understand what the stateful and stateless. If this is my virtual machine and this is my firewall, if any request I am getting from the outside, that we call as an inbound for my web server. If I'm getting any request from the outside internet in my web server, in my network, that we call as an inbound request. Right? If I am creating request from my web server to the internet, that we call as an outbound request. Right? If my request is going out of my network, there's an outbound request. If the request is coming inside my network, that we call as an inbound request. Right? So inbound, if request is coming inside. The outbound is request is going outside. That we call as outbound. Right? That was simple. The request. If anyone is creating a request, it also get a response. Like, if this is my browser, I'm creating a request like google.com is my request, and this is my response. Let's say facebook.com is my request, and this is my response. Right? So I'm creating a request over here, and I'm getting a response from my server. Right? So request can be generated by the web server. Right? If client is creating a request, right? So the web server will provide the response. If my web server is creating a request to the internet, anyone from the internet will provide them a response. Right? So request and the response. Right? So these are the four concepts: inbound, outbound, request and response, where the firewall works. Now, if you understand this thing, so let's see what is a stateless and what is a stateful. In a stateful firewall checks for the request and firewall check for the response, both sides, inbound and outbound. In a stateful firewall just check for the request. Firewall does not check for the response. If request is coming in, response is allowed to go out. So the inbound and outbound both. Right? So let's understand this with a real-time example. Now, assume that this is your apartment, and in the apartment there are 3 buildings, A, B, C. Right? And if there is a building, every building have one person sitting on the gate that they call as a watchman. Right? And just consider the watchman is as a firewall, because watchman also work like a firewall, just managing inbound and outbound. If someone is trying to come in, it scan for that. If someone's trying to go out, it scans for that, right? If the unauthorized person is trying to come inside the building, it just reject the person. It will reject the request for the particular person, right? So consider that this is my building, this is my apartment where I have 3 buildings over here, the firewall like a watchman, and I have a gate for the in and out both. And there is a actor. So consider this is my security maintenance guy who asks for the watchman to go inside, ask for the permission to go inside to the building, right? When the watchman got this request, watchman checked for the security card, the ID card of the security guy or the person who coming for the maintenance, right? So it checks for the ID, it calls the company like, is there anyone is coming from your side? It authorizes all the stuff. After all the kind of authorities, the watchman permitted this security guy, watchman permitted this security maintenance guy to go inside the building. So this my security camera maintenance guy is going inside the building, right? He done all the maintenance tasks. Now it is time to go out. So whenever it is trying to go out, again there was a watchman on the gate. So what do you think? Will watchman allow the person to go outside, or it will block the person, or will again check the person? There's the same watchman who was over there. Watchman already know that the person came over here just for the maintenance a hour ago or a 2 hour ago, right? So without asking any question, the watchman will allow the person to go outside of the building, right? So response come in, the request come inside and response go outside, right? So watchman just check for the request whenever it was coming in. Watchman doesn't ask for the responses whenever it was going out. That is basically a stateful firewall. So whenever a request comes inside your network, it creates a state, right? And on the it creates a state, you can call as create a session. On the same session, request is also allowed to go out with a particular session. So the firewall does not check for the responses, right? And let's assume we have 2 gates now. We don't have 1 gate, we have 2 gates. So one is for in and one is for out. One is the in gate, one is out gate, right? Now we have 2 different watchmen. So whenever the security maintenance guy come over here, it asks for this watchman to come in, the request for the going inside to building. So the watchman again check all the stuff, check for the authorities and granted the permission to go inside. So the watchman, so the security maintenance guy come inside the building. He done all the maintenance tasks. Now it is trying to go outside. It is trying to go outside. It is going to other gate. Now on the other gate there is the other guy. It's not the same guy. It's the other watchman, right? The other watchman again it will ask for the identity. It will again ask for the proof what you are doing inside the building, why you came inside, right? All the authorities, do you have the proper ID card and all, right? After doing all the stuff, if the person is authenticated, then it will allow the person to go outside the building, right? So in this case, it check for the request as well, and it check for the response as well. It check for the request and it check for the response. That is basically a stateless firewall. So whenever you have a stateless firewall, whenever is request coming in, it check for the request. Whenever response is going outside, again check for the response, both for the inbound and outbound, right? If request is getting from my inside the building, it will check for the request. If the response is coming in, it will also check for the responses, right? That is a stateless firewall. And stateful firewall, you can just consider there is only one watchman who is managing the inbound and outbound. So it will not check for the responses, it will just check for the request, right? A same kind of stuff over here, right? So NSCL is a stateless firewall and a security group is a stateful firewall, right? So NSCL is stateless and security group is stateful. So we can add a line over here like manages request and response both, and manages only request, not responses, right? Then one more difference is like this. NACL will allow you to block some particular IP address. If you want to block the particular IP address, if you want to block particular uh, service for the particular IP, you have authority for that. You have option for that for blocking purpose. So allow as well and block. You can do both tasks and block. But with the security group, you just have option to allow. You cannot block anything in a security group. You can just allow. That's the difference between NACL and a security group. So in NACL, you can allow and block, and in security group, you can just allow, right? And one more thing, by default, everything is allowed. The default NACL that you get, right? When you're going to create a VPC, you will get a default NACL. So in default NACL, everything is allowed. And whenever you create a security group, everything is blocked, right? And we can use a combination of both, right? So whenever you want to block something, just a block on a NACL. Whenever you want to allow something, allow in a security group, right? So we use a combination of both. How? While allowing, allow in a security group. While blocking, block in a NACL. And use a combination of both to secure your network, right? So we are over here. Let's discuss what type of security we will allow for the web server and for the database server, right? So consider that a security group for my web server I named as a WebSG. This is my configuration. So for the WebSG, what will I allow? First thing, whenever you want to allow any port or any service on the firewall, always think about the two things. The first one, the operating system of the virtual machine. Second, what type of application the server is hosting, right? So web server, let's see, it is a Linux server. So for the Linux server, we use the port SSH for take a remote access. Other thing, what type of application is hosting? It is hosting a web application. And for the web application, we use HTTP or the HTTPS, any one of it. So right now we are going to use, in a practical, we are going to use HTTP. So I will just allow HTTP. Again, if you want to do a ping, right? So the ping test, we use ICMP for the ping test, right? So you can check with the ping that my server is alive or not, a server is in network or not, right? So that was for the web server. Let's do the same thing for the database server, DBSG. Now, again, imagine two things. The first one is what type of operating system it is. So let us assume that it is again a Linux operating system. So SSH. If it is a Windows, then we will use the RDP. So for the practical, you're going to use a Linux machine. So it will be SSH. Then what type of application this server is hosting? Server is hosting the MySQL application. So for the MySQL, you have to allow the MySQL service, right? And again, if you want to do the ping test, allow the ICMP for the ping test, right? So these services we will allow in a firewall, right? But for what type of source, you have to specify the source as well. For which IP address you will allow it, right? For this, you have to specify the CIDR of the VPC. So whenever there is a network always comes with a CIDR value, the classless internal domain routing, or IP address for every network, right? So your VPC will have the IP address. So for the simplification, we can use IP address like 192.168.0.0/16. What type of IP addresses you can provide over here, that we will discuss later in the PPTs. So let's see, you provided this type of IP addresses. Then you divided this network into subnetworks. So my subnet is this subnetwork and the other subnetwork. So my first subnetwork, I can mention that 1.0/24. So there was a 16. Now I divided it into the /24. So it will be a 1.24, 2.24, 3.24, 4.24. Right? So this is 1.24, and I can mention the second thing as second subnet as for 2.24. So I divided my major network, that is at 0.0, into two small networks. It was 0.0/16, then it is 1.0/24 and 2.0/24. So I have two networks with me right now. Right? Then whenever anyone try to do SSH, so who will try to do SSH? I will allow SSH only in an internal IP address, only in an internal VPC. So the internal VPC IP address is like this: 192.168.0.0/16. For a security reason, I will allow SSH for only for the internal network. And same for the ICMP. For the ICMP, I will allow for the internal network. What about the HTTP? For the hosting, the client are on internet. They may have any type of IP address. We can't assume their IP addresses. So they can have any type of IP address. Right? So for them, there's 0.0.0.0/0 all over the internet. So from all over the internet, they can do this HTTP over here. Right? SSH only allowed in an internal network for the security purpose. HTTP for the internet. ICMP again for the internal network. Right? And same thing for the DBSG. For database security group, I will allow MySQL also in an internal network. Why? Because who are going to take the MySQL request? The web server are going to create a MySQL request, and it is inside the network. So I will allow only internal network. Again for the ICMP, only for the internal network. Right? So that will be my security configuration, my security group configuration if you want to hire security. Only allow the HTTP over the internet and all other ports only inside the network. Right? But it will create a problem. What type of problem? If my actor is on internet sitting at home or sitting at any other let's say in company office, where it is the actor is on internet, a laptop that actor is using, the PC that actor is using is on the internet, right? This is using the internet for connecting, right? For the HTTP, yeah, it's easily connect over the internet because we allowed over the internet. But what about the SSH? If my any of the Linux admin wants to access this machine for the configuration, they want to configure something, they want to patch the machine, they want to do some changes over the machine, they want to update something over there. So how they can connect? They don't have any type of option to connect to the machines because I have allowed SSH only in an internal network. And this actor, the Linux admin, is not in an internal network, it is on internet, right? And for this kind of scenarios, what we do basically, we add one more machine that we call as a jump server. And jump server will again will have the firewall. A jump server is any kind of server. Like whenever you want to grow in a private network, you first have to access that particular jump server. After the access of particular jump server, after getting remote access of jump server, then you can access web server and the DB server, right? Because web and DB are in a private. Both have port open only in a private. If I open a port over the internet, there are many chances that I can get a SSH request from the internet. I don't want that. So what I want, I just want a request from internal network because these are two critical servers. If any case my one of the server goes down, my whole application will be down. So I don't want to take a risk with a web and a DB server. So what will I do? I will add the other server, and that you call as a jump server. Right? And I will put the server on the public subnet. So, and I will allow the access, a remote access over the internet. So the people from the internet can take the remote access. If any case the machine is down, it will not affect my entire network or my entire application. Because the jump server, it is not a part of my application, right? So if a jump server goes down, it will not affect my application, right? It will also add on multi-factor authentication for the security. So whenever any user wants to access, they first have to crack the security on the jump server. After cracking the security of jump server, then they can go to the web server. So you also add a multi-factor authentication for your architecture, right? Now, so if I add a jump server will also need a security group. So let's say jump SG. And for jump server, I'm going to create a jump server as a Windows machine, right? So it's a Windows machine. So we will need RDP. For Linux, we use SSH, and for Windows, we use RDP. That's the remote desktop protocol. And we will allow it from 0000/0, right? And we will not need any ICMP or any other thing. We just need RDP, right? For now, I'm just going to use a 0000/0 because I'm on a public network. Whenever you're configuring, we are going to configure this thing on your internal, in your corporate account. You will just allow your static public IP address. If you have some static public IP addresses, you will just allow some particular static public IP addresses, not anything. Like if I have static public IP address like this, let's say 20.50.6.30, so I will just allow that particular network. But for now, I don't have it. So what I will do, that's 0 all over the network. That is not a secure thing. If you want to make it more secure, just go with a static public IP addresses, right? What we discuss over here, we discuss a VPC, security group, subnets, route tables, internet gateway, right? And what is the inbound rule? What's the outbound rule? What's the request? What's the response? What is a stateful firewall? What's a stateless firewall? And what rule we should allow in a security group, that we had discussed in this session.